What's going on? That's Textbook Sports Squad. Appreciate every one of y'all tuning into this episode and listening. Today is September 7th, 2023. And if you're a diehard football fan like me, you all know what that means. Week 1 in the NFL season officially begins tonight, 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time. The Detroit Lions, Jared Goff, Dan Campbell, head on over to Arrowhead to the Kansas City Chiefs, defending Super Bowl champions, looking to make a statement and show why they're the reigning champs. Thursday night, I can't express more how fantastic it's going to feel that football is back and we're getting into that momentum where college football is happening on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays. You also have the NFL on Sunday. Thursday night football is going to be back. I'm at a loss for words. If you're a football fanatic like me, this is like a holiday. This is like Christmas, a little kid waking up on Christmas Day and opening presents. And with that being said, with this episode, I'll be releasing and switching up some of the bold predictions and awards, projected award winners that I have for this year. It's just a couple, but you're not going to want to miss it. Don't want to miss this episode. Once again, I appreciate all of my subscribers, everyone who likes this video, and all of you tuning in. Go ahead, follow me on social media on my Twitter page at textbook_sports, Spotify and YouTube channel at That's Textbook Sports. Like this video, be a friend, tell a friend, share this video to those who love football, those who are football fanatics like myself or ourselves. And with that being said, of course, as y'all know, that's Textbook. And much like the NFL season, we're kicking off this episode. We're getting on the ground running with some predictions for the award winners that'll happen in February. For MVP, I'm going to keep it from what I had last time in my last podcast. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts just because he still has that core group around him to be able to what he did last year. With A.J. Brown, I expect Devontae Smith, who's in year 3, we all know the data with year 3 wide receivers like CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp. In year 3, they all had career years. I expect Devontae Smith to do the same and to prove that data correct once again. And then you factor in Dallas Goedert, that offensive line, a collection of solid running backs to be able to have Jalen Hurts with his mobility. Defenses have to key in on Hurts and the running backs. And then you combine that offensive line, giving the running backs open lanes for about 4 to 6 yards. I still have Jalen Hurts winning it. I think he should have won it last year. And looking at the schedule, of course, it's tough for the Eagles. They got a pretty strong strength of schedule. But if he still performs the way he did last year, with all that is around him, really tough strength of schedule, I expect him to win his first MVP award this season. And then for Offensive Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase. In his first 2 years has been historic. He's on historic paces, breaking records, winning awards, all of that. Now, much like Devontae Smith, he's entering year 3. I've told you all about the data behind year 3 wide receivers. I just expect Ja'Marr Chase to have a career year, and it's weird saying career year because it feels like his rookie year and then last year were all career years. But the data behind year 3 wide receivers just shows that in year 3, they skyrocket. I expect him to take home Offensive Player of the Year. Now, my Defensive Player of the Year, it's going to be another Philadelphia Eagle. Get used to hearing that a lot, especially for another one of my projections. I'm going with Hassan Reddick. Listen, Hassan Reddick last year had a phenomenal career year. 16.5 sacks. That was tied for second in the NFL. The only one, first place was Joey Bosa, and he had I believe 18 and a half sacks. So Hassan Reddick wasn't that far off. Then you add two young guys in Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Now Hassan Reddick is most likely going to get those one-on-one matchups, and we saw how much of a mismatch and how much of a nightmare he was for offensive tackles. I expect that number of 16 and a half to improve very much so to where he wins Defensive Player of the Year. And then for Offensive Rookie of the Year, I should say, I'm going with Jackson Smith-Njigba. Jackson Smith-Njigba at Ohio State in 2021 with a roster and wide receiver room featuring Garrett Wilson, first-round draft pick, Chris Olave, first-round draft pick. Statistically, Jackson Smith-Njigba led the team. I mean, he led the team in yards, average, receptions. So he's not unfamiliar, or he's familiar with being in a crowded wide receiver room, being the projected wide receiver 3, operating in the slot, and he's thrived in that system. Now in the NFL, he's got DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, so you see a very similar path to where he was, or scenario, when he was at Ohio State. Now it's just in the NFL, where Jackson's going to be that quote-unquote wide receiver 3, operating in the slot, feasting. I expect him to feast again. And I believe it to be I view Jackson as a similar talent to Jamar Chase. They have very similar situations. Chase, when he was drafted by Cincinnati, you had Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins on that roster, and Smith-Njigba, he has Metcalf, Lockett. So they were kind of viewed as that wide receiver 3, and it was a crowded wide receiver room, so you thought, how are these guys, there's too many mouths to feed, how are they going to have productive years, I guess, for lack of better words? Well, Chase thrived. Now he's the alpha in that wide receiver room. I expect Jackson Smith-Njigba to do the same. Now for Defensive Rookie of the Year, I was thinking about Christian Gonzalez, the DB drafted out of Oregon to the Patriots. But after looking at it and looking at the collection of talent that the Philadelphia Eagles have, and then taking into account Jalen Carter's overall talent and just how much of a beast he is, he's drawn comparisons to be the next Aaron Donald. We'll see how that pans out. A lot of people project him to be the next Aaron Donald. And he's drawn, once again, rave reviews in camp from the coaches. He should just be able to feast. And if he's getting one-on-one matchups, look out for opposing quarterbacks. It'll be a rough day. Their jersey's going to get dirty, that's for sure. Now for Coach of the Year, I had a little bit of trouble with this one, but as I thought about it more and I looked into it, I'm going to go with DeMeco Ryans. If you look at Coach of the Year awards that have been given out most recently, 3 of the last 5 were first-year head coaches. In 2018, Matt Nagy won it. Then in 2020, Kevin Stefanski won it. And then, just last year, Brian Daboll won it. I expect that trend to continue with DeMeco Ryans. Listen, he's going to have the 49ers defense. He had the 49ers defense ready to go. He's going to have the Houston Texans' young and talented defense featuring Will Anderson, Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley. He's going to have that defense ready to go. They're going to be no slouch. The question is on the offensive side of the ball. And listen, they have some nice wide receivers. They also have Dalton Schultz. He was very productive with Dallas. But they're also, for the wide receivers speaking, they're young. They do have Dameon Pierce. And with a rookie quarterback, you always want them to have the best supporting cast as possible. There's going to be problems and issues with that offensive line. And with rookie quarterbacks, it takes a while for them to really gel. I believe that by week 8 or 10, CJ Stroud will gel. Then if you look at the Texans' strength of schedule and then the division, I don't see Tennessee being as good. And I think Tennessee is a team that's just barely on the outside looking in for the playoffs. And I think if Tennessee and Houston do match up, I think Houston can possibly take both of them, but most definitely split. Outside of Jacksonville for the Houston Texans, I think this is a team that can win 6 games, maybe somehow, some way get to 8 wins. But if they do that and if they get to 8 wins and being a team that was 3-14 last year, and then they go from being one of the worst teams in the division to maybe the second best in the division, I think D'Amico Ryans gets that nomination. And then lastly, for Comeback Player of the Year, I'm going to go with Chase Young. He's dealt with some injuries. We all know how exceptional he was at Ohio State in his rookie year. He was looking like and proving himself to be one of the top pass rushers in the league as a rookie. But he's been dealing with some injuries. This year, he says he feels 100%. I'm going to take his word for that. I'm going to believe him. I'm going to buy into the talent, to what I saw at Ohio State, what I saw as a rookie, what he did as a rookie. And I have him winning Comeback Player of the Year, especially considering that the Commanders' defensive line is also very strong. It's not maybe on the level of the Philadelphia Eagles, but it's really close, maybe just a level down. And so there you have it for my projections of who's going to take what award this year. I want to know what my audience thinks. What's your bold prediction for this year? Who will take home what award? Let me know in the comments section. That's the end of the first quarter for this podcast. Now, with that being said, be sure and go ahead. If you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Turn on post for all notifications. You don't want to miss out on any of the podcasts that I have or any of the upcoming videos that I'll have as the NFL season gets into full force. And, of course, be sure to follow me on social media, on Twitter at textbook_sports, on YouTube, Spotify account at That's Textbook Sports, and I just got a new TikTok. So go ahead, follow me on TikTok at That's Textbook Sports as well. You don't want to miss out on any content I have coming up. So Caleb Williams and his dad have been on the record saying Caleb might possibly skip the upcoming NFL draft and stay one more year at USC. That's obviously ruffled a lot of Cardinals fans' feathers. And it's got a lot of people like, oh, well, how could he possibly miss out on all this money being a first-round draft pick? And, well, what Caleb's dad's reasoning is, Caleb doesn't want to go, it sounded like Caleb doesn't want to go to a situation where the team's going to be absolutely flat-out terrible. He went on saying, the way that the system has it, you're going to go to the worst team. That's kind of messed up. He also said it's better off if Caleb doesn't get drafted than being drafted first overall. So, I mean, it brings up an interesting debate. Should Caleb Williams stay another year at USC, forego being the top pick in the NFL draft, which we all know he will, and stay one more year at USC? I'm not Caleb Williams, so I'm not going to say what he should do, but here's the range of outcomes if he decides to go to the NFL, and here's the range of outcomes if he decides to skip the NFL draft process. So let's start with him going to the NFL. Let's say that the team like the Cardinals, who everyone projects to have the first overall pick, has that pick. They're tearing things down and rebuilding. The offensive line is suspect. They have good weapons. But of course, for all quarterbacks, Of course, they'd love to have weapons. That's a cherry on top. But what they really want is that protection. They want a fortress around them. That's not going to happen in Arizona. And if you're a quarterback and you're getting hit a lot when you're young, that's going to take your confidence absolutely down. And the most obvious one, yeah, you're going to be banged up a lot. You're going to have to deal with a lot of injuries. So there's that scenario. Now there's also the scenario where, let's say the Cardinals don't end up picking first overall. Let's say it's a team like the Los Angeles Rams, or maybe it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If it's the Los Angeles Rams, I do find it very likely that Caleb does enter the NFL draft, because with the Los Angeles Rams, they've got Sean McVay, you got Cooper Kupp there. You don't have much outside of Cooper Kupp, but you know Sean McVay is going to make sure that the Rams offense is well efficient, well run. They do have problems on the offensive line, but they're attempting, and they're still in that stages where they can build things around a potential franchise quarterback. Listen, we all know Matthew Stafford isn't going to be the long term. The reason why they traded for him was so they can win a Super Bowl. The long term wasn't really that thought of. And then if he goes to a team like the Buccaneers, they do have a lot of weapons. They have Tristan Wirfs, and they have veteran guys along that offensive line, and they're still building some pieces. So it's a decent offensive line compared to the alternatives I mentioned. Now, let's look at if he were to stay for one more year at USC. Before NIL, I don't think we're having this type of conversation, because these guys will want to get that money right away. Okay, and it's a big contract when you are drafted first overall and when you're drafted in the top 5. But with NIL, that kind of the players have that leverage where they're like, well, I can, and even if you're a player like Caleb Williams, I can stay one more year. Let's say I win the Heisman this year, and then I stay one more year. How much? Do you know how much that NIL value is going to skyrocket if he becomes the first player to win the Heisman, the second player actually to win the Heisman 2 times back to back? That NIL money is going to skyrocket. And then there's also, it's in Southern California, USC. You got Lincoln Riley over there. His offense is always going to be, he recruits really well on offense, and they're always a top flight offense every year. So being the top pick in the NFL draft is nice, but there sure as heck is a lot of good benefits staying one more year at USC, especially if he does win the Heisman back-to-back. It's halftime of the show, and so if you haven't already, please be sure to go follow me on my socials, on Twitter at textbook_sports, Spotify and YouTube account at That's Textbook Sports, and I've got a new TikTok on. You'll want to follow me there for skits of podcasts I make and skits that I make in general at That's Textbook Sports for TikTok. Be sure to give me a follow. See you there. The seat for Matt Rule in Nebraska could be turned on from ignite to hot very quickly if they lose to Colorado. In week 1 against Minnesota, the offense that Mike Rule is usually traditionally known for having top flight offenses in college, it was mediocre to say the least against Minnesota. They only put up 10 points. Now facing Colorado, who had a very, I'm not going to say a convincing win. It was a close game, but a win that opened the eyes of a lot of viewers. Listen, these are both first-time head coaches. Deion's first-time head coach in the FBS. Matt Rule, he's not a first-time head coach in the FBS, but he's in a new situation in Nebraska. Use the transfer portal as it's all been done now. This is the new age of college football. You use the transfer portal to build your team, whereas traditionally it took quite some time to rebuild a program and to build a culture. We're in a society where we like to compare. So to see that these are head coaches in new destinations, for if Deion and Colorado win, and let's say if Colorado wins convincingly, they put up 30, 40 points. Nebraska goes out there. Let's say Nebraska, for sake of argument, slightly improves from 10 last week. Let's say they put up 17, but it's a 32-17 loss. If that were to happen, there's a lot of questions that Matt Rule has got to answer, and the expectation was to be what Deion's done so far. The expectation was to rebuild Nebraska back to their glory days. That hasn't happened so far. I like to give him a little bit more patience, but patience in sports is frowned upon these days. End of the third quarter for this podcast, and that's right, we're getting into crunch time. So with that being said, make sure to follow me on my Twitter page at textbook_sports, Spotify account, YouTube channel, TikTok account at that's textbook sports. Don't want to miss it. See you there. In Carolina and for the Panthers, the wheels are flat and seem to be on the verge of falling off. You have a rookie quarterback in Bryce Young, who you traded up for, selected first overall. Then you gave away DJ Moore. And I can't say you gave away DJ Moore just because you did secure the guy who you think is going to be the franchise quarterback. And so if you think that what you're trading up for is going to be the franchise, then by all means, do what you have to. But the cons of that are you're bringing a rookie quarterback with a suspect offensive line so far and not very many pass catchers. Now, they do have Adam Thielen, and over the past couple of years, or the last 3 years, Thielen's production has been a bit down. Now, that could be due to Justin Jefferson, but the flip side of that is with Justin Jefferson, you should have more production just because Jefferson's going to draw so much attention to one side. And looking at the past couple of years, or comparing last year to this year for Adam Thielen in terms of production, it's dipped down a bit, and it's dipped down in these specific areas. When you look at his receptions, they improved by 3 from 67 last year to 70 this year. But in 2020, it was a slight drop off from 74 to 70. And then for receiving yards from last year to the year before, 716 to 726. For the touchdowns, 6 this past season, 10 in 2021. But you look at for efficiency, he's been pretty darn good, especially when it comes to route running. For total routes in zone versus man, Thielen ranked 3rd. In route win rate, he ranked 15th with 46.5%. In routes versus man, he was 2nd. Win rate versus man, he was 29th. So he's been efficient at getting open. Going back to the Panthers and Bryce Young. For Bryce Young, it's going to be a similar situation and scenario from college, but just at a much more difficult level. In college, Bryce Young didn't have that many playmakers. I mean, he had Jahmyr Gibbs, but he didn't have any receiving threats or weapons. Going to be very similar to Carolina. The only caveat is the offensive line is suspect. And it's been suspect in preseason. And with Bryce's height and his weight, I don't want to knock him off for that. But when you have to compare that and then you look at the offensive line is suspect, so he's most likely going to be taking a lot of hits. That's not what you want if you're the Panthers. And then on the defensive side of the ball, their star edge rusher Brian Burns is holding out, or he wants a new contract. We've heard the quotes from head coach Frank Reich to Brian Burns, and it's not looking pretty over there. All right, so we're in the fourth quarter of this podcast. And with that being said, I'm going to give my Super Bowl prediction for this year, as well as my prediction for tonight's game. So starting with my Super Bowl prediction, I have it being the Cincinnati Bengals going up against the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the Philadelphia Eagles don't start at that Super Bowl slump. I think they start out pretty hot to begin with. They do have a tough strength of schedule. Comparing to what the talent they have on that team and how they're stacked just about from top to bottom, I don't see that giving them any problems. And then with the Cincinnati Bengals, it's going to be a much tougher road for them just because they are in the AFC. The AFC North was one of the most improved divisions. When you talk about all the teams, I expect Deshaun Watson to go back to the way he was playing at Houston. So Cleveland should be a threat. Baltimore is going to be a threat. Kenny Pickett and the Pittsburgh Steelers have been one of the most improved teams during the offseason. They'll also be a threat. But with that being said, I still do have the Cincinnati Bengals winning this division. Most likely have to play a wild card game just because, the Chiefs are going to they'll have a bye, most likely the first week. Then you have other teams like the Bills, the Dolphins, all competing for that second spot. The Chargers as well. So they do have that much tougher of a road, but I still think they get to the Super Bowl. This is a team that's been through those types of scenarios and done it before. They get to the Super Bowl, but unfortunately with that offensive line, the state of it's still not improved, and it takes time to build an offensive line. You can't necessarily just put all these pieces together, put Band-Aids over it, and expect it to work. And going up against the Eagles front, which is very dominant and ferocious, that'll be the one hurdle that prevents Cincinnati from winning this year's Super Bowl. And then for tonight's game, I'm going to go... Now, there hasn't been any recent news if Travis Kelce is playing or not. All signs are pointing to it's looking like he might not play. He's going to test it out in pregame, see how it feels. So if he does play, I think Kansas City wins by a narrow margin. But if he doesn't play, I just don't know where Patrick Mahomes and that offense is going to go from there. Considering Kelce is just about their everything on that offense, they need him to disguise matchups for clear-out routes. Now, Andy Reid is still going to do a tremendous job by finding ways to get other guys open. Listen, the Kansas City Chiefs last year, they were number one in, I believe, yards after catch. So they weren't asking Patrick to do as much. They were just giving it to their playmakers. They still have Kadarius Toney and a collection of other guys. It's nothing to Travis Kelce. They'll still be good, but also this is the Detroit Lions defense I expect to take another leap, especially with young defensive talent like Aiden Hutchinson. I've mentioned James Houston. They got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in there at the safety spot. Cam Sutton, very solid corner. Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, although he is a rookie, at the linebacker spot. So the defense should be overall better. And then Kirby Joseph, I can't forget him at the safety spot. So they have a good defense from level to level. And if Chris Jones isn't, most likely it looks like he's not going to be playing. There's a deal doesn't seem imminent. The Lions have a very solid offensive line that I don't think a lot of people give them credit for. So with Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're going to provide fits for that Kansas City defense. Therefore, I have the Lions winning if Kelce doesn't play. That concludes this podcast episode. As I've mentioned before throughout this video, go give me a follow on social media, on my Twitter page, at textbook_sports, on my TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube accounts, at That's Textbook Sports. If you liked this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you've liked any of my previous videos, hit that subscribe button. Be a friend, tell a friend, share this video out to others, to football fanatics like me and ourselves. Appreciate it. Appreciate every one of y'all. Let me know what your thoughts on this podcast, what I should debate next, what your hot takes are for this upcoming season, and who you believe is going to win such award this year. Appreciate every one of y'all. Have a good day. God bless. Take care. And until next time.